Hi, Dom.
Hey, Mike, what's up?
Not too much. We're getting close to Easter.
We're getting
Very,
very close to Easter.
very close to Easter. And and actually today is Good Friday.
Hmm.
Um, but So to everybody out there, a happy Good Friday, if you can call.
It sounds weird saying Happy Good
I
Friday.
know, seriously. It was when the history of Good Friday is it's not really a holiday. It's an
It's a
holy
holy day of
a holy
obligation.
day. But anyway, so yeah, we are doing Willy Wonka, and this is my pick, but you prompted this, and I'm glad you did. So thank you for that because
Well, for those of you watching at home, it's often a struggle figuring out what movie to choose next,
yeah,
mainly because there are so many great movies. There are so
yeah,
many we want to get through.
oh,
And,
absolutely,
and so to guide us, uh, we've been sort of saying, well, is there anything about this upcoming date? Like for the Christmas season, we try to pick Christmas themed movies.
yeah,
And knowing that Easter was coming up, we had a discussion about what's a good Easter movie.
yeah. And it's funny because, like, with me, movies that I've always, there's the movies like the old classics like Easter Parade and things like that. But For me, like growing up as a kid, and I'm sure for you the same, but like things like The Wizard of Oz and Willy Wonka, those were like magical kids kind of movies that and growing up, they always seemed to have The Wizard of Oz on around Easter. Um, that's when I kind of noticed it, if I'm correct in that. Not so much anymore because television is not what it used to be.
Yeah, really, who watches TV these days?
No, seriously, I don't. But I mean, when I want to watch The Wizard of Oz, I put it on, and I have a pretty good copy. But um, but yeah, same with Willy Wonka. And I'll let you do the intro on this. But what was the actual year? Um,
1971.
yeah, 70. That's what I thought. And
This movie is over 50 years old.
Yeah, and I was born in '59, so I was quite young when this came out still, and around the age of the most of the actors that played in this, and the movie I didn't see it at the theater. I think I saw it on TV the first time. But go ahead and give the intro, and we'll get into
Okay, okay. It seems odd given the intro because it's so entrenched in our culture that it's almost like giving the synopsis of like Little Red Riding Hood or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
But in any case, the story focuses on young Charlie Bucket, who lives with his impoverished family in the same town that the famous Willy Wonka chocolate factory is in. Now, Willy Wonka's chocolate factory has been closed to the public for years and years, and no one has seen the famed chocolatier Willy Wonka until one day he announces that he's holding a lottery. There are five golden tickets that are going to be put in his chocolate bars and sent around the world. And whoever finds one of those golden tickets can get not only a lifetime supply of his chocolate, but a personal tour of the factory, which again, no one has seen in years, by Willy Wonka himself. So, as you may imagine, Charlie Bucket is extremely excited when he gets one of the golden tickets. And he and five other children enter the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Only one will leave.
Well, it's
I'm being a little dramatic there, but I'm not that far off the mark.
no, not at all. And in fact, I did you read the book?
I did not read the book.
Okay, because I read the book years ago, and I really need to reread the book now because it's a little different in the book than it is. And Roald Dahl wrote and his writing is actually pretty incredible. And the guy was amazing. His stories were, even his children's books were a little on the dark side, and this certainly is. That we'll get into that, but he also wrote for Tales of the Unexpected, which is a series that I loved. These creepy adult kind of horror stories, um, but um, but he wrote a lot of children's books too. And this, I read this when I was a kid, and I really liked the story. Like I said, it's a little different. Charlie was in dire poverty. His family was in dire poverty. I mean, it was actually like tragic how poverty stricken they were. Um, and So that was one of the aspects. But I was thinking about it when I was watching this. These were all kids that got the tickets, but he sent these out with the idea of getting them to kids. But like, there was
He didn't work anything in that guaranteed they were going to be kids.
no, but that was kind of what his end goal was, apparently, because apparently when you look at what he was doing with these golden tickets, apparently he was trying to pass on, which he did at the end, but he was trying to pass on his factory and what he was doing to a child. And he even says that in the end to Charlie. But these kids, each one of these kids, um, they all are like more either wealthy or just spoiled kids, from families that just completely indulge the kid. And it
Heck,
almost,
that kid that was into I was shocked on the rewatch. The kid that was in TV, he was physically violent.
yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, every single kid ends up like having like really awful stuff happen to them. And of course he makes the kids, which contractually they can't even like, I don't know, maybe he had some kind of weird clause there that exempted, but kids aren't even supposed to be able to sign legal documents, but they had to sign a legal document which absolved him of any harm. And the factory is dangerous. I mean, there's a lot of stuff with that factory, but the factory is completely dangerous. So that's just,
I am always the first person. I often think way too much about the logic of a movie. So I'm usually
yeah,
the first person that will say, oh, that would never happen, or that was completely unrealistic.
yeah,
But this is a movie that is so surreal.
yeah,
You have to really take a giant suspension of disbelief pill
yeah, yeah.
on
Oh
this
yeah.
one. The
No,
movie works.
yes, it works. The story worked. Like I read this when I was a kid, and I remember one of the things, um, they were so it was so descriptive about how poor they were, and one of the things that and I actually remember doing this because it was such a it was such a strong it was such a strong storyline about the kid would only get like a chocolate bar, like maybe a couple of times a year or something like that. That's how poor they were.
Even
And
that's amazing because it sounds like they ate nothing but cabbage and water.
yeah,
So why would we spending money on a chocolate bar? Heck, the
well,
grandfather was spending money on tobacco.
yeah. And but when Charlie would get the chocolate bar, he would break off a tiny piece and he would put it in his mouth and this was from the book, but he would let the chocolate dissolve in his mouth like savoring the chocolate, and he would make the one chocolate bar last for days by doing this, by only taking like a small piece and letting it dissolve in his mouth. And I actually remember as a kid, trying to experience what that was like. Of course, I'd never make it through the whole day without eating the chocolate bar. But at the same time, it's like, you know, the description was just such a strong, heady description. But looking at the situation that's behind me, that's the mother that's over there by. I'm surprised they even had that TV, which was a really old TV even back then. But they had that little TV. They're in a like a pretty much a one room, almost a one room apartment, but there's a couple of beds like shoved together, and that's the grandparents are all in that bed together, which in the book that's the way it was. And it was I always thought to myself, that's completely bizarre that there's four people in one bed.
Have you seen the Saturday Night Live skit on this?
No, I haven't.
They've actually done a few of them, but one of the funniest ones to me was Kristen Stewart was the host, and she's playing Charlie Bucket. She's playing the kid,
Yeah.
and the kid comes in, shows the golden ticket, and the grandfather gets out of bed saying, "I'll go with you," and Charlie's like, "Wait a minute, you can stand up this whole time?
Okay, maybe
I've
I
been
have
working
seen
my
that.
butt off
Yeah,
here."
because that actually seems familiar. But well, when I was a kid, that was one of the things that I think I always like thought about was like, well, if he could get out of bed, which when he does get out of bed in the book, I think I remember him as just like being really weak, and he was like he gradually got his sea legs again. But in the movie, look, that's him in the background, and that's played by the wonderful Jack Albertson, that guy had won like Tony Awards. He had been in vaudeville. He was probably of all the people in this movie, he was other than Gene Wilder, he was probably one of the ones that had the most prestige as an actor, and he
Yeah,
was
because even Gene Wilder wasn't very well known at that
not
point.
not as much. Not definitely not as much. But Jack Albertson, man, he was in Chico and the Man. He was the man, and the tragic Freddie Prince that died. I don't know whether he killed himself or was an accident, but he died by a gunshot at the height of his fame. But Jack Albertson was in the TV series with him, but he was in so many things, and wonderful actor. And but yeah, when he gets out of bed, at first he's like kind of reeling around, but next thing you know, he's dancing and singing, and it's like wow. Um, so when I was younger, I used to think to myself, well, as poor as they are, why aren't they all working if they're just laying around in bed lazy? But since I've gotten older, I do understand that there's all kinds of different health reasons that could keep you from being able to do stuff. And I don't know what his thing was,
Yeah,
whether
it's
they
still
just
all in one bed. It's kind of disgusting.
it's pretty disgusting. And there's a scene, and I had it up. I actually had it up just a second ago, but you can tell when he's peering under the bed that there is a bedpan under the bed. And I'm thinking, wow, these people are all using bedpans. And laying in bed together. It's like, plus, if you look at his nightgown, he's he's actually like looks like he's unwashed. There's so many. This is
Which is
that's
weird since the mother washes clothes for a living.
exactly. Well, I think she had everything she could do to. That it was sad itself because they do describe that in the book how hard she worked, and Charlie had the paper route just to try to help her out. And that's another thing. The actor that played Charlie Bucket really it seemed like in real life too that he was also a pretty sweet kid. Had been in had been in a few school productions and
You
things
know how
like
many
that.
other movies he was in?
I didn't think he really had any other
Zero.
movie. Yeah, not
So
yeah.
it turns out that Willy Wonka, as beloved a classic as it is right now, was a box office flop.
It was,
And
but at the
and
same
that
time,
kid that plays Charlie Bucket, that's Peter Ostrum.
Yeah.
He was so depressed, he was so put off that he bought himself a horse.
Yeah. Well, apparently from what I had read about, that his parents apparently had kept animals, and when he got back after he finished the movie, there was a veterinarian that really influenced him, and used to come around and care for their horses, and he got really into his horse and horses, and it inspired him to become a veterinarian. And he
Yeah.
really had no desire, and he was very private. He wouldn't, like a lot of the kids that were in this movie, would go around to shows and stuff like that. He wouldn't talk about the movie for years. He just wanted to live like a normal, regular life, and but he had from what I gather, he had a pretty good experience with the movie. Gene Wilder kind of took all the kids under his wing. He knew that a lot of them hadn't had a lot of experience, and so he was giving them acting tips and helping them out. Um, but yeah, like I said, all the kids seemed like they were kind of good kids. That's
Yeah,
another thing
they
that
stayed in touch.
yeah, they did. And actually, the girl Violet, she when she ended up having a stroke. And yeah, she had a stroke that was actually pretty bad. She had some weird, like, bad luck. She got hit by a car when back
Oh,
in the, I believe it was back in the like maybe late 70s or something. But she got hit by a car that broke her leg. She had a few things that like that happened. But she did have some act. She was Amy in Dark Shadows.
huh,
Um, yeah, she had she was on the electric company,
huh.
which, yeah, I didn't even realize that until I was looking up some stuff on the. But yeah, she actually had some. I don't think any of these other kids really had much in the way of acting experience, probably except for her. And ironically, the Veruca Salt, she ended up there like probably one of the ones that got the most attention. She ended up, and that's her later in life, but she ended up, like, they named a band after her. That was, Veruca Salt. There were a lot of things with people, like, just noticing her character was funny, and so yeah, there was that. She's got the "I want it all" kind of her
I
music.
couldn't find I was hoping I downloaded an image of her dad, but did
Uh,
you recognize the dad?
oh, you mean her dad in the movie? I
Yeah.
thought you meant in real life for a
Oh no,
second
not in
there.
real life.
Yeah.
So her
Uh,
dad in the movie is played by Roy Kinnear.
okay.
Do you
Oh, okay.
recognize that name?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Greg.
his son was
Greg.
Rory Kinnear in Men.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah. No, I did not.
They look so alike. He
Yeah.
and his son, I couldn't believe how alike they looked.
No, but I'll tell you what, like, I think the casting in this was absolutely wonderful. And, I actually really wanted to include as few pictures as, because when you asked me, like, which one do you want to do? I was like, this one. I do the original one. I did not want to do this one. And I really did not want, like, I downloaded as few of pictures as possible. I have never seen this one. I've
I've
seen
never seen it either, never had the desire to.
No, I've seen clips from it. I think there's so many things that were wrongly cast in this. It's not, I've got no problem with Depp. But the kids did not seem anywhere near as appealing, including Charlie. I just felt like there was no chemistry with the kids, and then one of the big things that really bugged me about this was the Oompa Loompas. And I was a little bit weirded out at the original Oompa Loompas, but they basically cast one guy and who was a little person. Um, they basically cast the one guy, and they just duplicated him. And I thought that was the silliest damn thing that they possibly. It's like, what
But
would you trying to
I
save
gotta tell
money?
you, the Oompa Loompas were problematic to begin with.
They were, and because in Roald Dahl's original story, they were actually
Yep.
pygmies. And he corrected that because he
And
realized, yeah, that was probably not something he should have done. And there were things apparently, people, one of the things that bugs me about our society nowadays is how the cancel culture, because there are old authors and stories and things like that that, when you look at like times and things that were different, but Roald Dahl, he actually corrected different stuff that he had done with.
say what you will about cancel culture. I've never heard that many people trying to cancel Roald Dahl.
No, 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 I haven't
You're going to
either.
get a vocal few that are going to give cancel culture a bad name,
Right.
but it's such a minor thing in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, in his original story, apparently they were they were some kind of pygmies, and I'm
Hmm.
not going to go too far into that, but he changed it to the Oompa Loompas, and which was the correct thing to do, and he did it. But yeah, like I said, I no, I don't think that he, but I don't think that he was somebody that was like, writing stuff in. It wasn't like he was, you know, he wasn't writing offensive stuff in my opinion. He was, like I said, what he did have in there was changed, and it was changed by him. But
The other thing that they changed is the original name was going to be Charlie in the Chocolate Factory.
yeah, isn't that what they named the awful sequel? Um,
Oh, I have no idea what they named the
yeah,
sequel.
yeah, I think it was. I'll pull it up again. I'll show the much as I don't want to. But now here's another thing. This movie definitely has a lot of dark aspects to it.
Oh, so many dark
It's
aspects.
well, like one of the things that's going on in this movie is this guy. He's approaching all of the kids and whispering in their ear, and he's so like I remember. I'm. It's not like a lot of even back when I was a kid. Um, I got jaded pretty early on scary movies, but I remember this guy like it was like wow, this guy is like really creepy, really scary, and that like him whispering in their ear, you never knew for sure what he was saying to them, but it didn't sound good. And he finally, when he approaches Charlie, that's when he like bring me the gobstopper and the everlasting gobstopper. And but this whole thing, and that was a big part of this. Willy Wonka is he's I have to say the character, at least in the movie, and Gene Wilder definitely plays him this way, but he's very paranoid and he's kind of deranged. He's got a little bit. He's very
So
sweet, but he's also a little
so he won the
strange.
director over. Like they were doing casting and Roald Dahl wanted someone else to play. He was unhappy with the pick of Gene Wilder.
Yeah, yeah,
Peter Sellers begged to play Willy Wonka, but they saw this guy and they said, this is a quote, his inflection was perfect. He had
yeah.
that sardonic, demonic edge that we were looking for.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. When you see him in this, the expressions that he makes, the way he delivers lines, it's everything's done. He's very sarcastic. I mean, he's extremely sarcastic. And the other thing is, it's almost like he had just gone out and done a whole lot of research on all these kids, and he was like, "Yeah, these other kids can't make it." But there was the whole thing was about tests, and they were testing each kid. about, and he gave each kid their moment of whether or not they would pass the test, including Charlie. And and the one of the big tests, of course, was the everlasting gobstopper, but he was testing them all along the way, and each one of them fails in their own right. And
Each one of
one
them
of the
fails
things that,
in a potentially lethal way.
well, yes, that's the crazy part. And I mean, some of the stuff that happens, like when the scene here, the only one trying to help um, Augustus when he goes in the chocolate river, and Gene Wilder's going, "My chocolate, my." In this scene when he goes in, he Gene Wilder almost pushes him in. He's not really like, and like he's yelling about, you're contaminating my chocolate river. That's all he's saying. And like I said, Charlie's the only one that actually helps him. And the kid gets the kid gets sucked into a pipe, which is, I mean, look at this. Here's the kid there. He's almost drowning in a chocolate river, and uh, like I said, Gene Wilder's just looking at it like, oh my God, he's going to contaminate my chocolate. Now it's all going to have to be drained and cleaned, and and so
The
like I
people
said,
that
it's
worked on that set said that water smelled foul.
really, really,
Yeah, it was water with dye to make it look
yeah,
like chocolate, but they also put a crap ton of chemicals to, keep mold down, to make the water stable, I guess.
yeah. Well, and in this scene, what's really hilarious, I mean, the kid gets sucked up into a pipe, and every single one of these, as each kid gets eliminated, every single one of these scenes is hilarious, hilariously humiliating for the kids. Like this one here, he's stuck in this pipe, and everyone's talking about, oh well, he's so fat, he's actually plugging up the pipe. And Jack Albertson is saying to Charlie, "Watch, he ever when it happens when a cork's in a gun and it gets put, or when a bullet comes out of a gun, and it's like they're watching to waiting to see this kid go fly." That's a dummy, by the way, but but um but yeah, they're watching, waiting to see whether or not the kid's gonna go flying out of the
Well,
pipe.
well, yeah, and to add insult to injury, after every single one of these things, the Oompa Loompas sing this song.
Yeah, well, that's what's really hilarious. He's got he's got these Oompa Loompas that are sarcastic, and they mock each one of the each one of the kids as they go. That I thought that actually won me over on, because I thought they were so weird looking even for back in the in the 70s, with the hair and the eyebrows and stuff, and the it was just, it was such an odd look, but they won me over with those songs. Yeah, and yeah, when they're asking who's to blame, the mother and the father. I was thinking to myself, if you're a parent, you're probably sitting there thinking, oh God, yeah, blame us. But but yeah, like I said, I thought the wonderful casting. The kids are great. Gene Wilder is delightfully
So
delightfully,
Gene Wilder had one demand to take the role.
yeah,
He wanted his introduction to be that he walks out the factory doors with a heavy limp on a cane.
yeah,
And then at one point, the cane gets stuck in the cobblestones and he takes a few steps without it. And then he realizes and he falls face first, but then turns it into a flip
yeah,
and
somersault, yeah,
stands right up triumphant.
yeah.
And
It's
when asked why, he said, because then the kids, the audience knows never to trust anything my character says.
Yeah, yeah, and when he's talking to them, there's the everlasting gobstopper that is the true test of every one of the kids. But but yeah, his delivery is so maniacal. Um, like the stuff that he's saying, There's the other thing about this movie. This was such a time of like drug use and psychedelics and things like that. This movie is like totally psychedelic. There's one scene when they're in the boat when things start really going weird, and Violet actually says, "What is this, a freak out?" Which is a total 60s term
That
from the drug
that
culture.
scene with the boat is
Yeah,
listed in a top 100 list of the scariest scenes
it
of
was
movies.
it was it was pretty freaky.
It was almost traumatic as a
Yeah,
child.
yeah. It was. I don't know if what age you first saw this movie, but I just remember, and like I said, I know I was still a kid. I was about the age of the actors, but I just remember like thinking to myself, "Wow, this is like kind of freaky." And when you see Gene Wilder in this scene, the song that he sings is just so weird and psychedelic. It's like, what the hell's going on here?
So the director, who was Mel Stewart, by the way,
Yeah.
he he used sort of a method technique for a lot of Gene Wilder's scenes in that he did not tell the kids, he didn't tell the other people what Gene Wilder was going to do. So when he actually freaked some of the kids out, because when he delivered the scene on the boat, they did not expect it and they thought he was really wigging out.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, believe me, look at his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
He looked like really whacked out. And there were so many scenes where he says things. This scene here, where Veruca is licking the wallpaper, and I mean, there's a scene. I think I have it, but I have a shot from it. But he actually grabs her face. That's it right there. He, and her tongue is actually like orange from the wallpaper. Which, by the way, some of his inventions were really whacked because lickable wallpaper in a nursery room, like that's real sanitary. But yeah, the stuff he says to some of the kids and the parents is hilarious. It's uh, like I said, this Willy Wonka, it was perfect,
We,
and
we last week we talked about Tombstone and how we can't imagine anyone else playing Doc Holliday but Val Kilmer.
yeah,
And
yes,
and this is the exact same situation. I have
yeah,
no idea how it would have been. But Gene
yeah.
Wilder was Willy Wonka. He is Willy Wonka.
He is Willy Wonka, and that's the thing. That's the tragic. There's certain movies that I'm a purist, and I really hate when I see a really good classic movie that gets remade. And this is one that I really felt there was. It's like remaking. And believe me, there's been tons of attempts to remake "It's a Wonderful Life." None of them have
There
been.
has?
Yeah, they've remade it. They've remade it, but changed it. Every time they've done it, it's been like horribly wrong. It's been, miscast. It's the same thing with the same. I don't know. Like I said, there's the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Why remake the movie? All the kids were just perfect in this. I want it now. It was the Oompa Loompas, the original
Do,
Oompa Loompas.
do you know the story of how this movie got made?
You mean as far as getting developed into a movie from the book? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the director, Mel Stewart, this his what was it, niece, I think. This was her favorite book.
Well,
And she, oh,
I
it was his
loved it.
daughter. It was
Yeah.
his daughter's favorite book. She'd read it like multiple times, and she came up to him and she said, "You should make this into a movie."
Well, I'm
And
glad she
so
did.
and so he started thinking about it, but like they couldn't funding for it. And so they're looking around, and it just so happened that Quaker Oats wanted to introduce a chocolate bar onto the market.
Yeah,
So Quaker Oats funded this to sell
yeah.
its chocolate bar.
Well, Dom, I don't know if you remember, but there were so many candy bars that came out around that when this movie came out. There were Wonka bars. There were a ton of different, and some of them were quite good. I don't even remember all of the different ones, but I remember a lot of kids that I went to school with. We were all buying the Wonka candies that came out. There was a whole line of them, and I think there was
Yeah,
a
the
candy
only thing
called
I
Oompa.
remember are nerds.
You don't remember any of them? Yeah, because
The only one I remember are nerds.
yeah, I think there was an Oompa Loompa thing that were maybe like almost like a sugar daddy kind of or sugar babies. What are the little round ones that are covered in chocolate? I think there were a ton of different ones that came out around that time.
Wow, that
And
reminds me. I can't remember the last time I've seen a Tootsie Roll. Do
yeah,
those still exist?
oh yeah, yeah. Tootsie Rolls. I think they're still popular. Like the little mini Tootsie Rolls.
Yeah.
Uh, Planet Fitness actually has a dish when you finish your workout. You can grab a because they're pretty low calorie, so you can grab a little handful of the little mini Tootsie Rolls. But yeah, there's those, and I mean they make the larger size Tootsie Rolls. I still like Tootsie Rolls. Now, one of the other things that I found kind of really touching in this movie, Charlie and his his grandfather, Grandpa Joe, they had a really kind of sweet relationship. He was good to Charlie, and uh, Charlie's first thing when he gets the golden ticket is to say, "Grandpa Joe, I wish you could come with me," because he could bring one person, and that's when the grandfather actually gets his ass out of the bed. But but
Well, now
yeah,
that you mention it.
yeah. So I mean, he sees the golden ticket and he's like, but yeah, in this scene here, uh, first of all, this could have been terribly tragic because when they take the sip of soda that makes them fly and float, this is what's at the bottom. If they had like because they started burping actually, which I thought was like really weird and crazy, but the fact that they started burping to get come down, that was what was waiting underneath them. If they came down too fast,
Yeah,
which I
they
guess
decide to fart instead of burp.
I know, yeah, yeah, and
Disaster.
that was one of the first things I thought of as a kid because every kid, especially boys, were obsessed with fart jokes and things like that. But that's what I was thinking is, yeah, if they start farting. But yeah, they were headed for a fan. And in fact, Charlie almost gets, he almost gets sucked into the fan. He's like really close because the grandfather's yelling to him, Charlie, you got to burp. You got to burp. Um, that was probably one of the
Yeah,
crazier.
this factory had so many OSHA violations, it's
Oh,
not even
oh my
funny.
God. Yes, absolutely. Now, another hilarious thing that I noticed when I was looking up the movie is I did not know that there was a whole toy line
Huh.
of yeah
I
these
didn't
are
know that
this
either.
that's Veruca, but if you look there's apparently and I never noticed it as a kid, but apparently there's been they've come out over the years, but there's a lot of different
Wow, how
um,
much are those worth?
uh, I would think there would be a little bit of value there to those. They unless they came out sometimes toy lines actually come out later. Now another little bit of trivia on this, and people have noticed this. I don't know whether you did, but Veruca is breaking that ball that had chocolate in it,
Hmm.
and she's eating the chocolate out of the
Hmm.
after she cracks it on a rock. That rock was a real rock, and when she cracks it on the rock, she actually cut her knee, and you can see the blood on the stocking on her knee. And a lot of people have noticed that in the movie that she had blood on her leg. And she
Huh?
said,
No,
yeah,
I missed that.
yeah. She said, yeah, the rock was real, and I cut my knee when I was breaking the rock. So, so, so yeah, that's a little piece of trivia if you haven't noticed that.
Well, so I'll counter with my own trivia. That
Sure.
room, a
Yeah.
third of the props were edible.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Well, he says that they are, but you wouldn't, of course, it's a movie set, so you think to yourself, oh yeah, it can't really be edible. But apparently it was.
No, they
Uh,
made so many things out of marzipan and whipped cream and toffee.
wow. Wow. Well, if you look at like there's several different scenes where they're when they're actually biting into stuff, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because um, a lot of the stuff looks like it really looked like candy. It looked like stuff that you could eat, and like this scene here with Gene Wilder when he's that he actually bites into it, he's chewing the cup. So
That is wax.
is it really?
He bit
Well,
into
yeah,
it and spit it out after every scene during every
wow.
retake.
So what was it because they used to have when I was a kid, I'm sure they still make them, but when I was a kid they used to have the
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 sugar.
wax lips and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. So I mean maybe it was that. But yeah, there I mean as a kid I always thought the wax lips tasted good, but they really weren't that good. I mean, there wasn't
I
much
never saw
flavor.
the appeal of that.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of flavor either. Now, Violet, um, I had mentioned that, but Violet ended up the character of Violet. She in real life she had a stroke late in later life, and she actually after she had the stroke, which was one of the things that was again you were saying that they all kept in touch. They did, and it says something for who a lot of the people were that were in this, but she had Mike TV and and the girl that played Veruca Salt came to visit. Both of them came to visit her after the stroke because she had she was not having a good time and not doing well. But apparently, one of the things that led to her death was she attempted suicide.
Huh.
And yeah, so I don't think she was doing well, and she ended up in the hospital. She ended up having she got pneumonia. She had a bad seizure, and she had a do not resuscitate. So the family ended up, having her um, disconnected there, and she died. But so tragically, she died fairly not young, but I mean she was probably around 62. But yeah, that was
Still kind of
sad because
young.
what's that?
Still kind of young.
It is,
It's
especially
actually hilarious what qualifies as young as one gets older.
I know, true, and it's weird because I'm definitely in my 60s, and I see so many people around me going, and some of them are much younger, and that always mystifies me more because I think to myself, I've had my own health issues over the years, and I think to myself, I would have thought that person would have outlived me, but so you
Yeah,
just
it's odd. Like let's face it, I was just over there. I was
yeah,
just over on the East Coast,
yep,
mainly to visit my mom. She's 85. She's still up. She's getting around.
yeah,
It's not like she was like living an overly health conscious lifestyle.
no,
She wasn't really working out. She didn't follow any strict diet. She wasn't
yeah.
inherently unhealthy, but still 85, still getting around.
Yeah, Dom, she does pretty darn well. She
Yeah.
she really does, and I mean, we should all be so lucky to get into her.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, this one of the scenes that actually kind of cracked me up in the movie too, because he keeps talking about like wanting the Mike TV, the character Mike TV, and that's his dad on in the movie, and who only has a couple of lines, but one of the lines is when the kid says, he goes, "Yeah, I want a Colt 45," and he goes, "Will you get me one, Dad?" And he goes, "Not till you're 12, son." But well, you know something. What one of the things that's kind of hilarious. When I turned 12, my dad gave me a shotgun, a single shot shotgun, 12 gauge, and so they did give that was commonly a present that sometimes a kid would get when they turned around 12. There were definitely a lot of kids that would be given. It's more taboo nowadays, but there's still parents that will do it. I think kids were different back then, though. They weren't going, they weren't doing the crazy shit they're doing nowadays, or it was pretty uncommon.
No, they were still doing some crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff, but not that kind of stuff. But I mean, nowadays, if I was young enough and had a son that was turning 12, I don't think I'd be giving them a gun at this point. I would, and if I did give them something, it would be locked in a safe, and I'd say, yeah, you're only going to have this under my supervision. But I actually had a single shot shotgun in my, I didn't have rounds for it, but I definitely had one. And so, like I said, it wasn't like it was, it was uncommon. And kids could go into stores and buy, I remember when you could buy 22s, little boxes of 22s, and now like I think they kind of frown on selling a kid ammunition. But
Well,
like I said,
isn't there like an age limit? Don't you need to be 18 or am
well,
I
yeah,
getting it wrong?
yeah, some states you have to be 18 to own a firearm, some 21. And honestly, I do think that because of because just how kids are growing up, everything seems way more intense. It's like whether you're a teenage girl or a teenage boy, if you're falling in love and it doesn't work out, that seems like the end of the world. Everything's like you take everything's more raw. It's on the surface. So the last thing I think you need access to unsupervised is a gun. So I mean, I think it's probably good and fun to take. I've taken family and friends to the range that were younger people to the range and let them shoot, but I certainly wouldn't be letting them, you know, have it unsupervised.
Well, also
So
I can see taking your kid out hunting. I can see the
sure,
use of a rifle.
sure.
A handgun for a kid,
Well, yeah.
that just doesn't compute.
Well, again, my feeling on this, and I don't want to get into whole thing with guns, but I was just going to say because I own guns and I own a variety of them, but at the same time, it's like for a younger person, it's got to be supervised. To me, it's like it's if you're going to go out hunting, if you're going to go out to the range, that's a great thing. But I certainly wouldn't not the way things are nowadays. I would certainly not be allowing a kid to, be unsupervised with a gun or allow unsupervised access. But and everybody's got their, but and get getting back into this stuff as each kid, Violet, of course, violates the rule of there's one candy there that it's a full dinner, which to me was a bizarre another one of his bizarre ideas. But he like very lightly says, no, it's not like don't eat that. It's not like it's not ready.
No, don't stop.
Yeah, that was another like sarcastic thing that was hilarious. He'd go, no, don't stop. And of course, when she eats it, she starts turning blue. Violet, you're turning violet. Violet. Um, he goes, it always goes wrong at the end. And he knew damn well what was going to happen. Now, in the book, there's a whole descriptive scene of the kids leaving the factory. And Mike TV has been stretched out because he miniaturized himself and he's like real tall because they've overstretched him. Violet has been squeezed back into who she was
I always wondered, like, how is that juice going to come out?
well, they squeeze it out of her apparently. But
Yeah,
when
but
she,
does the skin rupture? Like,
dude, when she leaves the factory, the description is that as she's leaving the factory, that she's still purple or blue or whatever, but like a blueberry. But yeah, there she is blowing up. And talk about humiliation. They're rolling her on the floor uh, to roll her out of there. And what to me, one of the funnier lines with Mike TV, and this is the scene, the Oompa Loompa goes up and whispers in Gene Wilder's ear, and he looks at him and he goes, "No, no, I won't hold you responsible." And it's like they're basically asking, well, if something happens when we're stretching him, so he's like, no, no, I'm not going to hold you responsible. Like, don't worry. Uh, just like I said, this movie was perverse and hilariously funny. I love this movie. I love the darkness of it. And, oh yeah, and that's the other thing. We were talking about this before, but this was filmed in Germany. I
Munich.
always, for some reason, as a kid, I thought it was England. I thought they were filming in England, but it makes a lot more sense that it was
Yeah,
Germany.
the
But
director said Munich had the almost fairy tale like architecture he was looking for.
yeah, yeah. And they were building the Olympic Village because uh, Charlie, the kid who played Charlie, he said one of his fond memories was actually being able to watch some of the construction of the Munich. And tragically, there was a talking about shootings. There was a terrorist attack in the Olympics, but that of course that had nothing to do with this movie. But they were building they were building the Olympic Village in Munich, where the Munich Olympics happened. But yeah, like I said, I think the kids probably ended up having a pretty wonderful experience. They all talked about how, and another thing that was kind of hilarious is both Violet and Veruca, they both had crushes on Peter Ostrom, the
Huh.
Charlie, and there's a scene in the movie where they're like going down the stairs and they're elbowing each other, like fighting each other, but they got along. They were friends, but apparently they competed for time alone with Charlie. So they both had. I don't know whether he had any crushes on them. That was never said that I know of, but but they certainly had a crush on him. So that was kind of funny. They were all kind of at the age of like between 12 and 13, as kids will do. And but yeah, if you look at behind me there, that's some of there's Peter Ostrom as a vet. I mean, they
Yep.
kind of they kind of all Violet, it just says dead, but Violet did be
I know.
continue.
It's
She did continue on as an actress. Yeah, Augustus became an accountant. So so they all went on, and they all seemed to have, they weren't like child stars that had really tragic lives. They all seemed to.
they survived childhood stardom.
They did, and they seem to have had a good fun time there. I think they kind of relished their roles. So yeah,
Man, she really did get all the attention though.
she did. I mean, it was funny because it was it was funny because her whole thing was the song was I want it now, and but she kind of you know
Hers was the only name that I can predictably remember from this movie. Like I don't even remember Charlie Bucket's name until I
yeah,
watched the movie again.
yeah, no, she was she had charisma. I mean, I'm surprised she didn't do more. She did do some acting afterwards, but I'm surprised she didn't do more. And she would definitely her character in the movie was kind of a fun character. She was she was bratty, funny. I mean, all the kids were kind of bratty except Charlie. Charlie's this sweet, wonderful kid that 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 almost gets in the end. And that's another thing. Gene Wilder, because they had the whole story, but backstory there that he closed the factory because his candy secrets were all being stolen, and he is completely paranoid, and he's shut his factory off, and it's not until Charlie actually proves to him that he brings the everlasting gobstopper back and puts it on the desk, and right away Willy Wonka is immediately overwhelmed. It's like, wow, this kid is actually a good kid, and he actually did the right thing, and that's when he embraces them and gives them the
Still though,
factory.
like we've watched this guy for the last hour be completely unhinged.
Yeah,
He does a 180 turnaround
yeah.
and then stuffs them all into an elevator that may kill them all.
Well, that's the other thing. Now, obviously, he's got this maniacal, crazy quality about him because that's the same when he actually is congratulating him. He's like, "You won, Charlie, you won." But
I would
uh,
have been so freaked out at that embrace. He's been so off his nut.
yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden, yeah, then he turns completely kind and but then yes, he puts them he puts them both in or all of them. But they were Charlie and his grandpa Joe, they were the ones that probably were having the most fun. Like all the other parents, the kids, everybody were freaked out about the factory. But Charlie and the grandfather are just like, this is fun. They were having a good time. So they were kind of like Charlie was kind of right up his alley. He had that same fun loving spirit, and so did Grandpa Joe. But I mean, they got in the elevator, and he's like, "I've never pushed this one button. Go ahead, Charlie, push it." But
so
no, this is
so
a
uh,
wonderful movie. It never should have been redone. Shame on them for even trying. Um, this is
yeah, I
this
just thought it was weird. Like, who
Yeah.
who does that?
Yeah. Well, not with a movie like this. Again, there's certain movies I think to myself, that could probably be remade. It might be a lot better. Um, I mean, when you look at remakes, I've talked about that. I thought the True Grit remake actually was quite good. Um,
Other than True Grit, though, I can't think of a remake that was better or even as good as the original. I've seen oh, what was it? The original one was the Arnold Schwarzenegger one,
yeah.
where he's on Mars.
Oh, yeah. Total Recall.
Total Recall.
Yeah,
So I've seen both Total Recall. The original is better.
way
The
better.
the
Way better.
mechanic that was
Yeah.
originally Bronson,
Yeah.
and then I think it was played by Stratham.
Yeah.
Original was better.
Yeah. Yeah. True Grit uh, easily rivals the original, and the original is great, and I love the original, so I'm not taking away from that. But the remake is actually quite good. It's a terrific movie. I highly recommend it. Um, we'll have to do both.
And
But
now that we are straying into talking about other movies, I think
yeah,
we
yeah.
might want to call this a wrap.
Sure. I would say that this is another one that if I had more thumbs, I would give you those other thumbs. I mean,
It's
oh,
hard to judge. This is almost more than a movie at this point. This is like a
yeah,
cultural phenomenon.
my extra thumbs. It is, and to me, it's a holiday movie. Like I said, I think a wonderful holiday movie. It's fun around this time of year because of everybody doing the candy, and this is all about candy. Um, Terrific movie. There's Veruca eating the chocolate out of the. But no, it's a terrific movie. I fully recommend it to anyone that I'd be shocked if no one's seen this movie. If you haven't seen it in a while, revisit it. It's a great movie. Lots of fun. It's not just a look at that. Can you imagine owning the that ticket with autographed by all of them. I don't even know how you get that autographed by everybody, but somehow they did. Um, no, anyone that hasn't seen it or hasn't seen it in a long time, revisit it. It's just great, and stay away from that one. I don't know. I guess there's people that like, that's one of my pet peeves is, um, if you haven't seen the original and you watch something that's a remake and you think, oh yeah, that's a great movie. It's like at least give the original a shot before you see if it's something like this that's a well-loved movie. At least see the first one.
And I gotta say, I'll be perfectly honest, not having seen the remake, I am in no position to make any comment about the remake.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen it. I've seen clips, and the clips were appalling to me, especially the fact that they used one guy for the Oompa Loompa. And CGI when used properly can be great in movies. I have no problem with technology being used properly, but Hollywood tends to get lazy and they overuse it. And this one here, it's like really you couldn't hire more than one guy to be an Oompa Loompa. I mean, really, your budget is that constrained? If it is, then don't make the movie. Um, but they took one guy, and apparently the guy ended up
I
getting,
gotta tell you, with how much CGI goes for these days,
yeah,
that CGI may have been more expensive than actually hiring
yeah,
multiple people.
yeah. And I also heard his salary ended up going up real high because they did duplicate him. There was some kind of, I don't know what the contractual thing was, but they would have been better off hiring. And that's another thing. They get into this whole thing about like hiring uh, dwarves or small or little people, whatever the correct term is these days. But there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people, little people, that have complained that they're being passed over and not used for roles. And you could get into it's almost one person made the argument. It's almost like you doing blackface or something for like hire, whether it's creating CGI or whether it's making somebody that's not maybe a little person into a little person. But I look at it as like, why not hire somebody that is a little person that wants to do the role? And you're not making fun of them or demeaning them. If anything, the Oompa Loompas were actually making fun of everybody else with the songs. They were having a good time.
They were so judgmental.
Yeah, yeah, it's hysterical. I actually that's one of the things. Like when I first saw them, like I said, their appearance was a little bit bizarre and weirded me out, but the way they were made up. But they have grown on me over the years, and I think they're probably one of the better parts of the movie. They're hysterical. Their songs, the dancing, all the mocking, the whole thing. It's just a lot of fun. But getting back to this, we're closing this out. It's a wonderful, wonderful movie. It's a wonderful movie for this time of year. Um,
Perfect Easter movie.
yeah, it really is. I mean, it's all about the candy. It's all about it kind of a magical thing with Easter. So it doesn't really necessarily represent Easter, that's for sure. But it represents candy and fun. So
It
uh,
represents what children think of
yes.
Easter.
Exactly, exactly. So I mean, they're all waiting for the basket and the candy and stuff like that. So I would say if you get a if you get a chance to see this again before Easter, check it out because terrific movie. And with that, Dom, I think we're going to wrap it up. But what your pick is next week? Do you
Oh,
have
yeah.
one?
There's only one movie I can choose for next weekend because what many of you might not know is that April 26th is Alien Day.
Okay, I
It
didn't realize
commemorates
that.
the release of the movie Alien. So my next movie will be the movie Alien.
Okay, so the original Alien
Yes,
with Sigourney
Sigourney
Weaver.
Weaver.
All right, excellent. I'm excited about that and happy. That's one that I definitely would have picked myself at some point.
Oh, it was
So
inevitable.
yeah, it was inevitable. So, yep, great choice. Dom, I look forward to that next week, and I look forward to the rewatch.
I
I
know. I'm
love.
excited. I haven't seen that in a while.
It's been a little while for me also, and I love all of the aliens except for Alien 3. I was not wild about that one, but yeah, I actually love the whole franchise. So I'm excited about that. Glad to rewatch it.
I'm excited
And
to watch it, excited to talk about it.
yeah, so having said that, I think please you guys leave a like, subscribe, leave comments, leave if you have a movie pick that you would like us to do to talk about, you know, let us know. Um, critiques, comments, whatever. But we sure could use the likes and the
We're
subscribe to help.
starved for attention.
We are.
Starved.
We yeah. No, we believe me, it helps the algorithm. So please help us out. We're a very small channel, and we need the help. If you're still here watching, please participate. A lot of people will leave a like or they won't leave a like. They'll just watch something and then it's like, oh, pass it over, don't leave the like. But we can use that. It does help. So thank you very much if you do that and thank you for watching. Dom, happy Easter. I wish everybody out there
Yep.
happy.
Happy Easter.
So yeah. See you next week with Alien. Cool.